All right, well, welcome everyone to our new webinar series, Leadership Connection for today. And we have the opportunity today to have someone really special among us. And his name is Doug Hunter, who has led global organizations and who has at the same time a passion to train leaders. And he's going to be talking about how to learn from life. He's going to share about his learnings from a leadership career. 50 years as a leader teaches you how to start early. So hi, my name is Jesus San Pedro. I'm the program director for the Master of Arts in Leadership here at Mid-America Christian University at the School of Business Leadership, and I am passionately connecting the dots between relevant content, people that are either practitioners or content developers around the globe, thinkers, and a diverse and a wonderful group of leaders that are either students here or join us from the community, join us from the rest of the nation, and join us from the world. I'm here in my office at Mid-America Christian University in Oklahoma City, and I have the honor and the privilege to share with you as a host and moderator for this event. Today I'm missing Dr. Kelly Resemy, who is also co-host normally in this gathering. She is a program director and associate professor for the MBA program here at the university, specifically at the School of Business. And we want to welcome you to this new edition for this webinar series. I want to share with you the fact that we are so excited always to make sure that we have this great opportunity to share every month, by the way. And Leadership Connection has been with us for a few months now as an event that basically shares a space. It's an open space where we get to share with local, national, international organizational leaders, and at the same time with guest speakers that will connect and engage in transformative conversations. We want to make this as interactive and dynamic as possible, and it's all about leadership and how can we grow in what we do. Our MACU students, either graduate and undergraduate, local, online, as well as leaders from the community, play a significant role in these gatherings that we have and that we host every month, because we want to make sure that we not only equip you with the latest, but also bring wisdom to your journey, and at the same time share about what makes MACU's leadership model unique. Through this series, we want to bring the world to MACU, and we want to take MACU to the world. And we normally are joined by leaders that I get to share with, either whether I know them or not, but we're always in the lookout for experiences of learning through our programs here at the university and beyond. And so it's always online for your convenience, and it normally plays the third Thursday of the month. This is an exception because we had some things going on the same day that just made us move it. But we just hope that you may enjoy. So today I want to share, I don't want to extend myself too much because you came to hear to our speaker today. But I want to mention that here at Mid-America Christian University, we have a mission that we want to accomplish, and it's related to connecting people around the idea of how to create and to collaborate and to innovate to solve local and global problems for the glory of God through Jesus Christ and the good of society. So in our Masters in Leadership program, we have the blessing and the opportunity and the intention to help people learn to grow through their stages of life. And there's a connection with our topic today. We believe in what's called lifelong learning initiatives, which is, it doesn't matter how old you are, you can still learn, and you have a journey ahead of you that you should consider not only in training and growing yourself, but also helping others grow. And it's all about wisdom. I was just mentioning Doug before we joined today that I always see decision making, which is one of the courses that we teach here, in close connection with the idea of decision making with wisdom. I'm sorry. So wisdom, decision making, two things of the same, the two faces of the same coin, right? So the topic for today is related to learning from a leadership career. 50 years as a leader teaches you how to follow. Start early. And we're going to be seeing 4 steps to discern that your leadership makes a difference, how you can't lead by yourself alone. Then we're going to also hear about knowing where you're going isn't enough to get everywhere. Everyone there. And your role model is green. No, it's not. It isn't Kermit. So I think it's going to be a fun journey listening to Doug today. Who is our guest speaker? I want to introduce him the best possible way. So Doug Hunter is a seasoned executive, a follower of Christ for over 50 years. And his business career started in 1971 with Carter Elevator Company in Sioux Falls and led to his becoming the company's CEO in 1987. So that was 16 years, which is the average of someone inside a company until they become a CEO. I don't know if you knew this stuff, but so an opportunity got used as a tool to teach him how to steward a company for Christ while influencing other CEOs do the same. So in his generosity, his journey was not only about being a great CEO, but also making sure that he would extend and expand his experience and knowledge into others. So his career took him to Atlanta in 1994 and has included serving as CEO of 3 companies, 2 of which are in the United States and 1 in China, as well 2 international organizations. Doug has been part of starting over 100 companies globally, in addition to speaking or teaching in more than 40 countries. Wow, you've been around, Doug. And he's known as one of the most effective connectors in the global marketplace movement. And he uses that gift to pursue his other passion, which is identifying and developing the next generation of leaders who will advance God's kingdom through the world's marketplace. Doug and I had the opportunity to briefly meet in Manila, the Philippines in 2019 in the Lausanne Marketplace Forum. And I've always thought since then, Doug, that we needed to join hands, and I'm glad we're doing it right now. And I hope we can continue connected and moving the conversation for kingdom purposes forward. So thank you so much. Welcome, Doug, and thanks for being here. It's all yours.
Well, it's a joy to be here. It's a joy anytime I have an opportunity to speak to men and women who are moving ahead in their careers. I've got to tell you, one of the funny things whenever I speak to university and graduate school settings is to remind folks, or to remind myself, that I got thrown out of the first college I attended. Right after my wife and I got married, the school just told me not to bother coming back because I wasn't getting any benefit from being there. So it took me a second university before I actually finished my degree, 13 years from the time I started it. So for any of you out who are watching this, who may be on your second or third time, or you may be thinking you're taking too long, oh, it works. It works. And it seems like it was just a short time, but God was in the middle of it, and I'm thankful. So if it's all right with you, I'm just going to kind of share my screen, because I've got a PowerPoint that kind of walks us through this.
Yes.
And Dr. San Pedro and I had a wonderful opportunity in Manila to speak to marketplace leaders and learn, greet and get to know amazing marketplace leaders from around the world. God is definitely at work in the marketplace. And that's part of the reason I get excited about speaking to a group like you today. But it was so good to get to know him. And I spent quite a little time in Oklahoma City. I have a lot of friends there. And I met my wife in Enid, Oklahoma. So, I'm right up the road. And that was another part of the joy of getting an opportunity to be with you today. So here, if you are able to see it, should be my screen that I trust you are now
Yep,
seeing,
we're good.
and that will be our operating directions for today, so that you don't have to look at me, which is always a good thing. Yeah, Dr. San Pedro told you that I was in the elevator business for the first 25 years of my business career, and that was in the upper Midwest, the Dakotas, Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska, Wyoming, Montana. You know, there weren't a whole lot of tall buildings up there, but it was a great way to learn business, and to learn that business can be a great platform for sharing your faith. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I would share with you to begin with is that I was called into business. I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but just know that at one point I thought that God wanted me to be a pastor after I came to Christ, um, which was, I was already in business, and God got a hold of my life, and I thought I needed to be a pastor. I was in seminary, but I was also still working for the elevator company. And I had a meeting with an architect one day that changed my life. We were working on a big, beautiful international headquarters for an agribusiness company. I was designing the vertical transportation systems. He was the lead architect. And we were also in the same church. He was an elder, and I was serving as the interim pastor. So one day he and I had a meeting, and we were talking about the elevators, and he simply wanted me to do something that I couldn't figure out how to do. So I asked him something that I thought was quite natural. I just said, "Oh, Jim, we don't have the wisdom to figure this out. Why don't we pray? God's got a lot more knowledge of this whole situation than we do." And his answer actually was what changed my life. He said, "Well, Doug, you know, that's all right on Sunday, but this is the real world." I'd never heard anyone compartmentalize faith like that before. And so I started listening to how people responded to me when I was talking about Christ as Doug, the elevator guy, as opposed to when I was serving as Doug, the pastor. And I simply found that I spoke to people in a different way, and they heard me in a different way when I was speaking as Doug, the elevator guy. And that God used that then to call me out of seminary. I took my last class from my favorite professor, packed up my books, and went back full time to the elevator business. And it was at that point where God started teaching me what that really meant. Of course, the first lesson was to listen when he calls. If you've never read Oz Guinness's book, The Call, and of course you see it here on the right side of your screen, it's a wonderful reminder that there are two calls in everyone's life. The call to a personal relationship with Christ. And if you get that one right, then the others make sense. If you don't get that one right, then nothing makes sense. But once you've answered the call to become a follower of Jesus, then you'll find that he calls you, and he may call you more than once to more than one place, but he calls you to what he's created you to be. And in my case, it was a call to business. So in moving that forward, the next thing that happened in my life, and this is where I'm not going to tell a lot of the stories I'd love to tell. I just want to hit the high points of the things that he taught me, so that perhaps as you ask questions later on, or as you think about this later on, it'll be the points that matter and not just the stories. In this case, when I left seminary, I had the privilege of teaching a Bible study. It was called Bible Study Fellowship. Some of you may be aware of that. It's the world's largest Bible study. And I taught hundreds of men for over a period of 12 years. And one of the great things that God taught me early on, and I've been so thankful for this, because it set the tone for how I needed to operate my company, to operate my life, uh, just to function as a follower of Christ that made a difference in the world. And this is where the 4 points are that come right out of one verse in Ezra that became my first life verse. And we talked about this many times in places around the world because it just applies to the way that you want to be effective as an ambassador for Christ. There are 4 things in this verse, and they're very simple to that. And if you get them right, your life is going to make a difference. If you miss them, which so many people, business people especially, do, and I'll mention more about that in a minute. But pick out those 4. Look at the verse. What are the 4 things that you see? Actually, when I first started talking about this verse, I only saw 3. I thought that the 3 things you needed to do were to study, to practice what you learned, and then to teach it, to pass it on. It wasn't until I was speaking to a group in Slovakia, and a Hungarian physician was looking at this. He said, "Doug, you missed one." And I said, "So what did I miss?" And he said, "Well, you can't get any of that unless you first set your heart." So just let me encourage you. I don't know where you are in your spiritual walk, but just let me be sure to encourage you that you need to, if you're going to get everything else right, you need to be working on where your heart is and setting your heart to do with excellence the things that God calls you to do. And that's especially important in business. And this pattern it fits. It's one of the reasons that when I did sell my company, we sold for 10 times our market value because of the culture that working in this manner created. So know that there's value in the biblical truth that you and I are going to talk about today. So Ezra set his heart. You and I get to set our hearts. And this is the pattern. You study all you can. You know, I noticed in Dr. San Pedro's office, there are always books in the background. I've got books. There are a lot of places that we're not without a lot of great resources. But of course, the best resource is always the Bible. And if the other resources aren't based on the Bible, then you're going to come up short in terms of what the possibilities for you and for your career can be. But studying it so that you actually know what it says and not just what somebody else says it says or what you think it says. But you know, the one thing about elevators is you've got to know exactly what you're doing when you're putting them together, because if you're just a degree off from going straight up and down, you hit the wall. It doesn't work. The doors don't open. The elevator doesn't go anywhere. So it's important to know what you need to know. So Ezra studied, and then he practiced. He actually did what he studied. And I've got to tell you that one of the challenges that I see in the marketplace, and that you will see as you move into that part of our culture, is that there are people, and this is not a surprise to you, so I'm not expecting you to be surprised. There are a lot of people who say they are one thing, who say they believe something, and yet their life doesn't show that that's actually true. So what Ezra is telling me, and what I learned early on, is that if you don't practice what you speak, what you preach, as the saying goes, if you don't practice what you've learned, if you're not living the life that you know represents what you say you believe, then the rest of it is going to ring hollow. And you're not going to be able to teach, as the 4th point is. You're not going to be able to pass it on. You know, when I was early in my business career, I ran into a resource that was called the Christian Yellow Pages. And it was intended to be a great resource, a place where you could find companies that were supposed to be operating in a way that would be godly, with integrity and excellence and all the things that you'd expect. But the Christian Yellow Pages doesn't exist anymore, well, except in a very few places. And the reason is that people would go to it, they'd call the companies that they wanted to connect with, and then they discover that they said they were a company that represented the reality and the truth of Christ and the excellence that should represent. But in fact, that's not how they really operated. That's not how they lived. So just let me tell you that once you get these four things, the rest of it really becomes easy. Getting these four things, setting your heart, studying. And that's what you're doing, obviously, right now. That's why you're at Mid-America Christian University. And that's an important part of the process. Practice what you learn and then pass it on. And that's what I'm trying to do right now. Oops, sorry, I went the wrong way. One of the early lessons that I learned especially as I became a vice president and then ultimately the president and CEO of the first company I was a part of, Carter Elevator Company, was that I was not the smartest person in the room, and it took a little while, but it was abundantly clear before long that was a good thing. It's amazing how many people and their companies get sidetracked because they just assume that they need to have the answers. And I've got to tell you that if you think you're the one who has to have the answers to for everything that happens in an organization you're leading, then you're putting a cap on that organization that God probably doesn't intend. I guarantee in any room, it's going to be very seldom that you're going to be the smartest one in that room. And when the writer of the Proverbs tells you that without consultation, plans are frustrated, you've probably experienced that. When you have people around you who speak into an issue, who help make decisions, you're protected from making decisions that on your own, you don't have enough information to make appropriately or to make the best decision. So I learned early on, I had a wonderful team, developed a wonderful team. God brought me a wonderful team. And in every organization that I've led, the reason the organizations have grown and thrived haven't been because of me, but they've been because of the people that were surrounding the leadership decisions that we were making in those organizations. So several times in Proverbs, you get the same message. Without vision, the people fail, or the people are unrestrained. There are a number of places where it just reminds you that you need to be surrounded by others who can help you in the process of leading, and you don't need to be the smartest one in the room. I'm not even the smartest one in my family, so I don't worry about being the smartest one in the room. Now, I shift to this one. This is a little bit of a sidetrack, but it's fun, because one of the great things that happened in the world of Carter Elevator Company was I had wonderful people on my leadership team who, when we were doing a strategic plan, my CFO, my chief financial officer, came into that planning meeting and said, we need to ask God to give us something that encourages us that what we do is really connected to his kingdom, that he wants to be in the middle of what we're doing. And it's just a reminder to us that we're operating his company. It's not Doug's company. It's not our company. It's God's company. So we went through 3 days of strategic planning. And on the third day, she came into the and sat down. She was just smiling from ear to ear. And she said, I got it. And so obviously we were all eager to hear what she said. And remember, I was in the elevator business. So this is what she had found, that God gave us as a place to connect us to his kingdom in what we were doing at Carter Elevator. Where Jesus says, if I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself. Now, in the context of that verse, he's not talking about elevators, but for us, it was just what we needed to hear. And it was a wonderful conversation starter. And we didn't plaster this all over everything that we did. Although in every elevator we installed, if you climbed up on top of the elevator, you'd find it on the cross beam up there. But we used it as an opportunity it's just fun. Jesus saying, if I be lifted up from the earth, it's a great elevator verse. And the other part of it was for those who were believers in our company, and not everyone was. I mean, we operated in 7 states, and we had a lot of people, and some were believers and some weren't. But for everyone who was, this verse reminded us that we didn't have, it wasn't up to us to make the final sale. It wasn't up to us to convince people into the kingdom. It was only up to us to lift up Jesus, to represent Jesus. And that freed up, I can't tell you how many times I heard from our believing partners that it was lifting up Jesus and just being able to share him on the job, and not feeling that it was their responsibility to close the deal, that really made it fun for them to represent Christ. And it made it easier for them to represent Christ, because it was Christ they were representing and not them and not what they knew. So that was a lot of fun. Let me encourage you, if you're working in an organization or starting your career, just ask God to give you something from his word that is a reminder to you that what you're doing is connected to his kingdom, that everything that we do is connected to his kingdom. But he's got something for you. Every CEO that I've worked with has found a word from God that's been an encouragement along the way, and I can assure you that it's a great process to find it. The next one of the lessons that God taught me was, as we moved along, I discovered that it wasn't enough just to have a vision for where the company needed to go. That quite frequently I'd run into other CEOs who had visions for where they believed their company needed to go, but somehow they couldn't get their teams on board. And as we started looking at what it would be what would be the most helpful, I got to know a guy named Horst Schulze. Horst was the founding president of the Ritz-Carlton hotel chain. And while he was the president, they received the Malcolm Baldrige Award for being, the best of the best in the United States. And of course, they're global. And Horst was an amazing follower of Christ. He used to write his own devotional to his employees around the world every day. But the one thing that Horst did, and that were based on this verse from Habakkuk 2:2, record the vision, make it plain, write it down on tablets, so that anyone who sees it may run with it. In other words, you can have the vision, but you need to make it plain, and you need to make it portable, so that anyone who sees the vision not just hears it. You might say it differently, and different people hear different things. But what Horst did was he created, come on, give me this next, oh, wait a minute, I lost one. There we go. You got to add a preview of what's coming. This is the Ritz-Carlton Credo card. Every Ritz-Carlton employee during Horst's tenure had one of those, and they were also free to give them away. So I've still got the very first one that a Ritz-Carlton employee gave me, and it was part of my understanding of the value of writing down what God was telling me as I led an organization. I got this from the doorman at the Ritz-Carlton in Rancho Mirage, California. I think in 1989, and I've been carrying it ever since. It looks like it, but it's a great reminder that when God gives you something, it's not just enough to internalize it. You need to be able to articulate it. And one of the best ways to do that is to write it down, make it plain, so that anyone who sees your vision and is called to join you can follow and can do the things that God's calling you to do to get there. Now, one of the great lessons that came out of being a CEO, and especially, yeah, I mean, you need to understand, and this would go with a lot more of my history, but I got thrown out of college. That's true. That was before I was a believer. But I also have been fired. And I was a vice president of a large organization, and one Sunday afternoon, the CEO of this organization and the chairman of the board called me in, let me go. Never experienced anything like that before. I don't know how many of you have been fired before. It was painful, incredibly painful. But it was the beginning of God really massaging into my life the understanding that he's God and I'm not. And he sees things that I don't see. And as Isaiah 55:9 says, as the heavens are higher than the earth, so my ways are higher than yours, and my thoughts than your thoughts. And I still struggle with that, but it's one of the foundational lessons of leadership, is to know that I may be leading in one direction. I may make decisions, but when it doesn't go the way I plan, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a disaster. More often than not, God has a purpose, and sometimes he shows you what it is, sometimes he doesn't. But most of the time, he is so gracious to let you know that he's the one who's driving the bus, who's got his hands on the wheel. And if you're wise enough to not have to be the controlling partner in that relationship, that's why the bumper sticker that says God is my co-pilot is so wrong. God's got to be the pilot. You're in the co-pilot seat, and sometimes he lets you put your hands on the wheel. But the most important thing to do is to remember that if and you know his character, then even when things don't happen the way you want them to in your company or in your career, then God's still got a plan for it. It just hit me the other just a couple of years ago that I actually have never applied for a leadership position that I've held. I've applied for jobs, but every leadership position that I've had the privilege of filling has come to me, including CEO positions that I didn't seek, but they came and knocked on my door and ended up being amazing opportunities. And every one of them was a stepping stone into the next. And it's just an amazing thing to be able to, and it's easier for me now at my stage of life than perhaps for you, but even wherever you are, I'm sure if you look at the circumstances that brought you to this place right now, to be on this call, on this webinar right now, you'll be able to see things that God has done that have moved you this direction. And you can count on him to continue using even the most difficult of circumstances to do things that honor him, and that they just blow your socks off because they're so surprising. God is a God of surprises, but he is incredibly wise, incredibly good, and he doesn't waste challenges. So his ways are higher than mine, and it's a good thing, and I'm glad. Now, before I go to the next screen, which I've already kind of flashed to you, I've got to tell you that one of the other foundational lessons, and please pardon me if these are not as sequential as you might have hoped, but in 25 minutes, for 50 years. That's 30 seconds a year. I didn't want to do that. So I just wanted to share with you the things that have really colored my career and allowed me to do some of the things that I never thought I would ever be doing, and rejoicing in that, and having the privilege of speaking to you today. And one of the most fun things that God did in my life was show me perhaps the most important key to leadership that I've ever learned. And it's got a huge biblical background, but he taught it to me through uh, just the reality of this strange little character. I travel with a lot of other business leaders, and one of the things that characterizes business people, and that's especially true, unfortunately, of American business leaders, men and women both, is that sometimes we go into other parts of the world and we think that we've got all the answers, that no one does it better than we do, and that if they just listen to us, then we can help them cover the bases and be successful. Well, the reality is that's not a very winsome way to represent Christ, and it's not necessarily true. As I said earlier, we're not the smartest one in the room, and just because we're going into a country that has a culture that may not be as flashy or as sophisticated as ours, that doesn't mean that we're better. So what God did was he put in my life this nifty little character, and maybe you've seen him. It's harder to find than he used to be, but he's named called Gumby, and he's green. Now you can get him in other colors, but for the most part, he's green. And the thing about Gumby, if you look at that character, what do you see? If you're like me, there are a couple of things that jump out right away. First of all, if you had him, and by the way, I've got mine right here. I keep mine in my briefcase. You know, Gumby is incredibly flexible. I mean, you can put him in all kinds of shapes. And you know, being flexible is not a bad thing when it comes to being a business leader. If you think you have to do things in a certain way, more often than not, you find that you're breakable rather than flexible. And Gumby's flexibility, that's just a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful trait. And that also allows you not to have to be the who has everything right. The privilege of being able to admit when you're wrong, of being able to admit when someone else has a better idea, of being able to just be free to let God drive the bus, and not have to do that all the time. But there's one other thing about Gumby that I thought was especially appropriate for business leaders. What's he wearing? Well, the reality is he's not wearing anything. He is naked. And you know, if you're standing in front of a group of people, and I don't know if you've ever had that dream. I've never had the dream, but people tell me they have the dream of standing naked in front of a group. But the thing that tells me is that you can only do that and survive it if you're humble. If it's not about you, if you're not worried what people think, if you're not so concerned about being, you know, having and it's great to have the titles and all those things. And I've got business cards with a lot of titles on them, and that was all really fun and encouraging and challenging and discouraging and everything else that goes with titles. But the most important thing about Gumby's lesson in this regard is his humility. You can't be proud if you're naked, and Gumby is definitely not a prideful guy. So, and of course you can't tell if he's a guy or a girl either. So the best thing to do is stick one of those in your briefcase, stick one of those on your desk, use it something as just a reminder that being flexible and being humble is a great way to lead. And then the last thing I'll share before we do some Q&A is um, has to do with what I'm doing right now. And it starts as soon as working in your life and you start learning the things that you're learning through your life experience. And that's the basic lesson of, and Paul says it to Timothy in 2 Timothy 2:2, you take what you've learned, you take what you've heard, and you pass it on. One of the tragedies of what may be happening in our business world today is all the wisdom and all the experience of all the men and women who are baby boomers like me, who are going away and they haven't passed on what they've learned. I had an assistant who said, I want to learn everything I can from you because I don't want to make the same mistakes you made. And so if that's the motivation, that's great. But be sure to pass on what God's teaching you and start right now. So with that, I'm going to close. I'm going to quit. I'm going to let Dr. San Pedro come back on, and we can see if you have some questions that you may want to ask, or if he does, or if he wants to tell me he's going to delete all of this and say better luck next time. But thank you for the privilege of doing this, and please know that I'm available to pass on anything I've got anytime.
Thank you so much, Doug. No, we're not gonna delete it. I'm taking notes here, and I'm sure all the participants and are doing the same thing. We're so appreciative of your generosity in sharing your journey and also the wisdoms you've gotten along the way, because I'm sure you took the time not only to put together a presentation for today, but to reflect on the key things of your life in order for you to be here today, sharing with us, and also as you journey, as you said in the last portion, to pass it along to people nearby. And, there are many ways people learn. Some people learn by, experience. Some people learn by listening. Some people learn by getting into trouble 1, 2, 3, 7, 10 times, and that's how they learn. But sitting in front of you and listening to you, it just expresses not only your wisdom, but at the same time your generosity, and you're being intentional. I'm sure you could have talked about so many things in a webinar like this, but having chosen this, it's a really gift to all of us. So thank you. I'm just going to open it up. I have some questions here. I have some notes that I took, but if any of our attendees would like to share a question, we have the Q&A section. Feel free to write down your comments and your questions. And as we begin receiving those, I wanted to share, Doug, I feel that probably now what you were sharing has to do with the fact that you've gone through things and you've learned. And I can see in you a humble guy, a humble person, a humble marketplace leader that has Christ in the center of it all, and is willing to share it with those who are coming after you that may gain the perspective. But not everybody does that. Not everybody is willing to share, and not everybody reaches out a point of transition in terms of the role that you can play with the wisdom that you have. Some people just want to keep on performing all their life with a non-stop sense of like, I'm still gaining wisdom, so I can't stop to share that with other people, kind of thing. What would you say to people that are along the path of success, gaining wisdom, and they don't see the point where they can say, well, you know what, I need to stop. I'll continue doing what I'm doing, but I'll also invest some more time in engaging and addressing the emerging generation or those who come close to me, so a legacy is built. So if you could elaborate a little bit on that, and what do you think it happens, and how can that be addressed?
Yeah, sure. And that, you used the word a little bit earlier about intentionality. I think there's absolutely no doubt that that there are so many places in Scripture that the privilege of things and passing them along, other than, you know, the 2 Timothy 2:2 kind of verse. But even, you know, looking at my life and looking at my career, I look at a number of people who've mentored me. And so part of the equation is, you know, as the Bible says, freely you receive, so freely give. You know, I've had wonderful people who've invested in my life. And you know, we do it with money. You put it in the bank and you invest it knowing that it's going to bring additional reward. And one of the most rewarding things that happens in the life of a leader is to see his or her the things that they've learned reproduced and then even built upon in the lives of others. I can't tell you what a joy it is. You know, I mentioned I was a teaching leader for Bible Study Fellowship, and the man who replaced me, I taught for 12 years, and the man who replaced me just finished teaching for 24 years for, you know, 500 guys every time, every night that they meet. I mean, what an incredible thing. And then watching the leaders in the company, Carter Elevator Company, when we sold it, the company that bought us used our corporate culture to train their managers for years, because the people that we built into were building into other people, and the value that was created was really obvious. So there are a lot of motivations to be intentional in passing on what you got to pass on, and everyone has something of value that someone else needs.
Wonderful, wonderful. And the other question I wrote down here, Doc, you know, I'm part of Mid-America Christian University. This is part of what we're doing here. We always ask the question, are we training leaders to be wise? You know, it's not only whether they have a lot of knowledge, it's not whether they have a lot of capacity to analyze something, but are they able to integrate biblical wisdom? Are they able to apply what they know? I always tell people, it's okay if you read all of the books. You were mentioning about the books. Like, okay, probably people read a lot of books, but how much of what they read they do actually apply? And are they able to be transformed? I always tell people, if I get stuck in a page of a book, I try to I try not to continue, but go back and say, hold on, is there anything that I can do with this that I'm learning? If I find that there aren't that many things that I'm interested in, I just don't finish up reading the book. But if I find things that are touching me, are impacting me, then I want to do kind of like a self-coaching thing. Like, what of these is it that I'm gonna be able to apply tomorrow? And maybe it's only one or two things. So I'm always interested in that's part of what we do. Yes, we expose people to theories. Yes, we expose people to case studies. We expose people to the Bible. We expose people to what's going on in the marketplace. And so the big question is, are we training wise people? So any recommendation that in your experience, because I know you've been, as you mentioned, in the teaching side of things as well. I mean, on the leading, practicing, and also teaching others. Is there anything that you would suggest for us to make sure that we can continue training wise leaders? I know, for example, the accountability side, and I would love to also, if you can, at some point, share some of what you're doing with Pinnacle Forum, because I know it's, I mean, I don't fully understand the details of it, but my assumption is that it's related to accountability groups in the marketplace, and makes a lot of sense to me. But what else or what are the things that we cannot miss and leave out of the equation as we train leaders in terms of how to make them wise?
Well, really, you've kind of put two things together that were going to be in my answer to that question anyway. because wisdom very seldom flourishes on its own. The wisest people I know have been people who are surrounded by other wise people. You know, that's another thing in Proverbs. You know, if you want to be wise, then you walk with wise. And I have never in my career, at least not for, you know, any significant period of time, been without a small group of people that I meet with regularly for that very reason. So, you know, so one of the things that I recommend to people who want to be sure that they're acting wisely, making wise decisions is not to do it in a vacuum, not to do it alone. To have those people around you who will speak into your life, will speak truth, will pray for you, and then are a resource when you need real wisdom. I won't tell my favorite story about that. Sometime I'll have to tell you the story about. I had a small group that need be wise about what car to drive to buy at a certain stage of my CEO career. But that okay, now I've teased it, but I won't do that. And really, that's the reason for Pinnacle Forum. That's what drew me to Pinnacle Forum. Pinnacle Forum doesn't just work with business leaders, it works with the leaders of every arena of culture. And what we develop are small, confidential groups of men or women. They're separated because if you're going to be confidential and you want to go deep and relational and really become bonded, that just works better when you have men with men and women with women. That's just the reality of it. So what we do is we equip those leaders to be more effective in influencing their area of culture, and they come desiring to impact the culture. Whether it's a lot of them are business leaders, that's certainly true, but we had 24 people who ran for national office last year that you know, had support systems through Pinnacle Forum. We've got people who create movies, and if you've ever heard of PureFlix, the movie the movie distribution system, that came out of a Pinnacle Forum group. And the first president was a Pinnacle Forum guy, as they still are. So the idea, wisdom begets wisdom, and you can't do it alone.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Doug. I am a big fan and supporter of the idea of not, I mean, your second point today was not to do it alone, and we, not because we don't know it all only, but because we need other people's insight into our life, and also people that might tell us where we're going off the road at some point, and we need that. So wonderful. Is there any other comment or final comment that you want to leave us with, Doug, before we close it? And any resources or any, I mean, people can reach out to you through social media and everything, but I'm sure, is there anything else you want to leave us with? Or
no, just an encouragement. You know, I'm really encouraged by what you're doing and what Mid-America Christian University stands for. The secondary higher education is such an important part of the culture that unfortunately in so many arenas is not particularly faith friendly. So having a spot like you are created, God's created there in Oklahoma City is just and beyond through, you know, virtual opportunities is just so valuable. So for all of you who are taking advantage of this, taking classes, auditing classes, whatever it might be, just let me encourage you to stick with it. There's never been a time in certainly that I can testify to There's never been a time when we've needed more men and women in the marketplace who are followers of Jesus Christ and are willing to stand for their faith and not be afraid of what the culture is trying to do. Because actually the best way to do business, when you look at some of the most amazing businesses, that a lot of them have Christian roots, even if they've forgotten them now. The best way to do business is to do business from a biblical foundation. So for all of you who are here, you're in the right place, and just expect God to use your time here in a way that's just it's gonna be surprising, it's gonna be encouraging, and it's gonna be honoring to Him.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Doug. I appreciate it. And well, I'm honored to have been able to share with you, and thanks for your generosity and being with us today. And we continue, equipping people to go out and to face the cruel reality of the marketplace with the best foundation, which is a biblical foundation of leadership. So we're really excited. Before I close, I just want to share with those of you who joined us, and first of all, thank you for being here, those who attended today and those who are seeing this at a later moment. And I just want to share that we here at Mid-America Christian University, and as I mentioned in the beginning, I have the privilege of being the program director for the Master of Arts in Leadership degree. It's a short degree that can get you in a 10 6-week classes, 18-month, a degree that will allow you to do things like be more of a transformative, visionary, global, biblically oriented servant leader in a variety of servant on different organizational settings. It's going to allow you, this program is designed in a way that will allow you to understand the theoretical foundations of leadership, but at the same time, we filter that through a biblical worldview. And we try to be as innovative as we can in all the things that we do. And we focus on helping people apply in a practical way what they learn through what we do. And we also have a lot of collaborative initiatives such as this one. It's just an opportunity for us to engage. And it's not only about taking classes, it's also about the people that we share with as we move forward. And our program is also has 5 different concentrations: business, communication, higher education, public administration, and ministry leadership. And we have some courses that can be shared with the MBA program, I'm sorry. And we have some other things. I would encourage you to go and check on our programs online. But I want to say that we just got, not too long ago, noticed that we were listed as one of the best programs in the US by Organizational Leadership Education, Wiley University Services website, which honors us, but at the same time puts us into a position where we want to keep on thriving and making sure that we provide the best, not only for an academic pursuit, but for the difference that people can make after they graduate from what we're doing. So we're proud to share these, but at the same time, it lifts us up into a new level of commitment with what we're doing. And we also offer, of course, and that's part of our initiative here, the Master of Business Administration and our MBA, and it's also been consistently ranked as one of the state's best degree programs, and 18 degree of core courses, and we also have 18 hours of elective courses. And here are the details of all the emphasis that we offer. And I want to emphasize again, and before we close today, that we are intentional in terms of integrating faith and work and the understanding of business, of leadership. And that's part of what we do through our faculty and everything we do. Make sure you follow us on social media and be aware of our future offers of our Leadership Connection webinar. We're honored to bring you the best possible leaders and different perspectives. Sometimes we bring researchers that will share what they've found through what they've done. Sometimes we bring practitioners, and sometimes we bring a conversation from someone who has written a recent book. And so we bring people from Europe, we bring people from Latin America, we bring people from all over the world, from the US, different industries, and we just want to make sure that we get the best perspective of what leadership is all about. And if you're interested in joining, make sure you keep on following us and we'll keep you updated. And I want to remind you that you can access to our macu.edu/leadership connection website, where you can find all the previously recorded webinars we've had, and you can also find information to register for the future ones. And thanks for joining us today, and looking forward to seeing you next time. And have a great rest of your day and week. Take care.